When my HOA turned my backyard into a margarita-fueled paradise overnight, I realized fighting for my home wasn't just a battle, it was the start of an unexpected rebellion against entitlement. It was a bright Saturday morning, the kind that whispers promises of adventure, or in my case, absurdly overzealous encounters with my Homeowners Association. Upon pulling into my driveway, the unsuspecting suburban bliss was shattered by the sight before me. My once peaceful backyard had been turned into a veritable tropical resort. There it stood, in all its ostentatious glory, a sparkling pool gleaming under the sun, flanked by palm trees that, for all intents and purposes, had no business being in Ohio. The pièce de résistance, however, was the horde of HOA board members lounging under striped umbrellas while liberally consuming margaritas like there was no tomorrow. My blood boiled as I stood there, still gripping the steering wheel, half wondering if this was some twisted dream or an elaborate prank orchestrated by my friends. It was real. All right, too real. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I flung the car door open, practically launching myself out as I marched toward the poolside gauntlet. The first to notice my approach was none other than Karen McAllister, the reigning queen of entitlement and HOA bias. Her blinding aura of self-importance was only overshadowed by her choice of a neon pink blazer that screamed, "Look at me!" She smirked as I drew closer, possibly enjoying the delightfully pitiful sight of an enraged homeowner staring at the bizarre state of affairs. "Alex, you made it," she chirped, as if we were in some sitcom instead of a battle zone. "Join us. We have drinks." I swear she gestured dramatically with a sloshing margarita, as if inviting me to share a drink with the very forces of evil ruining my life. "Excuse me, Karen," I shouted, my voice rising an octave as it hit that delightful pitch where indignation serves as an involuntary vocal upgrade. "What in the name of all things holy is going on here? You just plopped a pool onto my property without even so much as a, 'by your leave'?" Her smile widened, the type of grin that suggested she was about 3 steps away from pulling a confetti cannon from her blazer and proclaiming it a pool party surprise. Meanwhile, the other board members began snickering, clearly relishing this moment. I glanced around, fueled by righteous fury, as if I could rally the other homeowners to rise against this monstrosity. After all, wasn't this my property, my land? I could practically hear the echoes of violins as I envisioned the epic saga of my fight against the HOA injustice. "For your information, dear Alex," Karen began, her voice dripping with mock sweetness, "this lovely oasis has been installed on what we call an unregistered easement space. It's a technicality, really. Just technical enough that we can do whatever we want." Her bravado floated over my head like a cartoonish thought bubble, filled with cotton candy clouds and rainbows. If I didn't want to throttle her so badly, I might have even found her audacity amusing. I thought of the hours spent trimming the hedges, mowing the lawn, and all those backyard barbecues where my friends and I had created a little slice of paradise just for ourselves. Yet here they were, unjustly pelting my peaceful space with their cabana dreams and margarita-fueled theatrics. The sheer nerve. At that moment, Tommy Lynn, my wonderfully laid-back neighbor, ambled over, casually munching on what looked like a snack-sized bag of chips, oblivious to the unfolding drama. "What's up, Alex? You look like you just found out that Santa isn't real," he quipped, his big grin making light of the absurdity. "Oh, just convincing the board of lunatics that their idea of fun should not include my backyard. No big deal." My voice dripped with sarcasm. Tommy chuckled, glancing at the scene of chaos where Karen was attempting to hand me a drink, likely a symbolic gesture meant to seal the breach between oppressed homeowner and overlord HOA president. "I think they're just in it for the vibes, dude. Look at them, living the dream, like Baywatch but with more gray hair," he joked, and despite the anger bubbling inside me, I couldn't help but let out a laugh, picturing Karen wearing red swim trunks and running in slow-mo toward the ocean. "This is not over, Karen. You can't just waltz into someone's life and make it your playground," I declared, resilience rolling off my tongue like a summer storm gathering momentum. "I refuse to accept that easement nonsense. You want a party? Let's see if you can party through a lawsuit." The tension was palpable, but amid the merry chaos of HOA members giggling over martinis, I felt a resolve rising up inside. Even if they reveled in their ridiculous pool party today, I was armed with righteous indignation and the unyielding spirit of a graphic designer who had fought against client absurdities. "Maybe next time you'll think twice about swimming into someone's backyard without permission," I finished, feeling like a mythological hero challenging an egregious temp agency of entitlement. As I turned away, ready to stand my ground, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope that perhaps this wasn't merely a fight I would win on my own. I glanced at Tommy, who shrugged with a twinkle in his eye that suggested more outrageous adventures were ahead. Perhaps my quest would inspire my fellow homeowners to take a stand against this HOA madness. I could practically hear the orchestra swelling, cue the dramatic anthem, as I prepared to wage war against the pool party that had invaded my life. What other absurdities would they throw my way in the days to come? Something told me this was just the beginning, as the dramatic curtain had barely begun to rise. As I stormed back into my house, fueled by a cocktail of anger and bewilderment, I could practically hear the ghost of previous battles echoing in my living room. Papers from last year's HOA nonsense lay strewn across my coffee table like confetti from a party that went incredibly wrong. I plopped onto the couch, clutching my head as if I could squeeze out some sense from the chaos outside. "What's next?" I mumbled to myself, and desperately flipped through my mental Rolodex of possible retaliatory plans. Should I draft a heartfelt letter to the board, decorated in elaborate fonts, expressing my distaste for their poor taste in property management? Or perhaps I should whip out the big guns and rally the homeowners for a literal protest, complete with homemade signs and dramatic speeches like some suburban Martin Luther King Jr. I could envision myself in front of our modest community center, laying down the law and waving a flag that read, "Pool party? Not on my property." The absurdity of it all made me laugh, albeit with a slight touch of madness beneath it. A knock jolted me from my thoughts. It was none other than my rebellious ally, Bob, with his unkempt hair and thrift store plaid shirt, practically bursting with righteous indignation. "I heard about the scene out back," he exclaimed, his squeaky voice laced with concern and a hint of glee. "Did they really build a pool on your property? Are we talking about pool floats and tiki torches now?" Bob's passion for fighting against the HOA had been brewing for years, ever since they'd chosen his magnolia tree as the next target in their quest for pristine landscaping. I could see the wheels turning in his head, transforming a simple pool incident into a full-blown conspiracy. "We need to strike back, Alex. Time to get the county inspector involved, like an avenging angel who loves paperwork." He threw his arms wide, as if cradling the idea like a precious gem. "Bob, my friend," I replied, narrowing my eyes as a crooked smile crept over my face, "you've just tripped on my brain's absurdity scale. An inspector? You mean we're really going to unleash the bureaucratic behemoth on them?" A sudden wave of laughter threatened to spill forth, picturing the juxtaposition of our carefully constructed rebellion against the sun-seeking, margarita-sipping HOA elite. Bob's eyes gleamed with determination. "Absolutely. There's no better way to rain on their parade than with a surprise inspection. It's like the ultimate party pooper move." As I pondered over the details of our plan, I glanced out the window to where the pool party was still in full swing. The board members seemed utterly unfazed, prancing around with their drinks and loudly proclaiming their small victories. Karen was animatedly discussing, what else? Pool maintenance with another board member, while occasionally glancing my way with a smirk, as if she were savoring my rage like a fine wine. Do they really think they can just invade my territory and bask in their entitlement? I huffed, finding comfort in Bob's enthusiasm as my righteous indignation bubbled back to the surface. "I'm going to need an emotionally supportive playlist if we're truly doing this," I muttered while scrolling through my phone. "Something with anthems of rebellion, and maybe a sprinkle of Eye of the Tiger, to keep our spirits high." "Sounds like a plan." Bob grinned, oblivious to the irony of the intensity of our proposition and my sheer willingness to turn my buoyant living room into a war room. We nabbed our laptops while I crafted an email to the county office like I was in an online duel of words. With every keystroke, I felt lighter. It was cathartic, a digital grenade targeting the laughable absurdity of the situation. I imagined the board members scrambling as the inspector emerged like a hero from a comic book, sporting a cape made of irresistible red tape and a badge that meant business. Bob chimed in occasionally with a classic line or a joke, keeping our momentum alive. "Just wait until they see the county inspector," he chuckled. I'd pay good money to witness that reaction. The next day, the appointed time loomed. As the sun rose, draping our neighborhood in its golden light, tension crackled in the air like static. I paced in my kitchen, the faint chatter from the infamous pool party seeping through my windows. Bob arrived, armed with a hard hat and a menacingly oversized briefcase filled with forms, construction paper, and an impressive assortment of googly eyes. Don't ask. "This is the mood. Let's show them we mean business," he said, slapping the side of his briefcase. And just like that, I was thrust from my coffee-induced haze into the more exhilarating realm of rebellion. Pacing toward my yard, I could feel my blood pumping in time with the gloriously rebellious soundtrack echoing in my mind. There we were, David and Goliath, ready for a showdown, and without a single slingshot in sight. With a deep breath, I approached the chaotic pool oasis where Karen was sitting, surveying her kingdom as if she owned the ocean itself. "Hey, Karen! Just thought you should know," I called out, heart racing and humor elevated as the seconds ticked by. She turned her head like a slow-motion movie scene. Her reaction was priceless. "We just invited the county inspector. He should be here any minute. Can you please ask your margaritas to step aside and find some rim to cool off in?" The silence that fell was heavy enough to cut through. The expressions of confounded glee on the board members' faces morphed into perplexed confusion almost instantly. Did they think I was joking? Would they finally realize they couldn't party in the dimensions of my land unchallenged? As I stood there, giddy with excitement over the absurdity of what I was orchestrating, it dawned on me. This wasn't just about a pool. This was a stand against entitlement, a tribute to every homeowner who had secretly fantasized about pushing back against the absurdity of HOA rule, and dare I say, a chance to unite the community in shared laughter at our ridiculous predicament. I couldn't help but wonder, would today finally shred apart the absurd veil of hijinks woven around my backyard, or was this just the beginning of a splashy story that was just getting started? As I stood there watching Karen's face transition from smug satisfaction to bewildered confusion, I could practically feel the energy crackling in the air like a live wire. It was as if the universe had conspired to grant me this moment of sweet, ridiculous justice. Who would have thought that the audacity of building a pool on my property would evolve into a plot fit for a sitcom, complete with unexpected guest stars? I blinked at the array of inflatable unicorns and flamingos floating lazily in the water, juxtaposed against Karen's now slightly disheveled demeanor, the very picture of entitlement crumbling under the weight of its own absurdity. "Did you hear that?" I exclaimed, loud enough for the entire HOA audience to hear. "The inspector is coming to check out your stunning aquatic masterpiece. Hope you got that pool up to code." My voice rang out across the yard, buoyed by a sudden wave of confidence, even if I suddenly felt like the central character in a slightly dark comedic farce. The moment hung in the air, suspended like a beach ball waiting for someone to hit it. Karen opened her mouth, no words emerging, just an incoherent squawk that drew the attention of several onlookers. The board members shifted uneasily, glancing at each other as if silently debating whether to make a break for it or stand their ground. I sensed their mounting panic like sharks circling prey. "Oh, what's the matter, dear HOA?" I added, leaning into my newfound role as the hilariously underdog hero. "You didn't think you could just commandeer my backyard without a bit of bureaucratic scrutiny, did you?" I threw back my head and laughed, emboldened by the sudden camaraderie that formed between me and Tommy, who now stood next to me, conspiratorial thumbs up raised in solidarity. This was how one fought back against hair-raising entitlement, through laughter and exaggerated absurdity. Just as I relished this golden moment of schadenfreude, a figure appeared at the end of the street, the sun glinting off the shiny badge on the officer's shirt. I could hardly contain my glee as I imagined him striding in with an almost cinematic flair, coffee-stained paperwork clutched in his hand like a sword of truth. "The county inspector is here!" I shouted, pointing at him as if he were the guest of honor at my surprise party, case files and all. Tommy and I exchanged delighted glances, a silent pact forged between us in the face of HOA tyranny. Meanwhile, the board members had morphed into a tableau of shock, hands awkwardly gripping drinks as they forgot about leisurely floaty revelry. I could almost hear the mental gears whirring as they scrambled to concoct a plan. Any plan, to salvage their little aquatic gathering, which was now teetering on the edge of chaos. The inspector approached with an air of nonchalance, passing by the inflatable pool toys like they were mere speed bumps on the long road to public accountability. I could practically hear the soundtrack of epic triumph swirling in my head, an anthem fit for a hero about to face down evil in their lair. "Hey there, I'm Alex, the homeowner impacted by this riveting pool adventure. Can you do me a solid and make sure all of this is legit? I'd hate for my backyard to become the setting of some community reality show gone wrong." As I spoke, I watched the panic on Karen's face blossom into full-blown distress. The laughter I had been holding back burst forth, amplifying into the chaos around me. Who knew standing up for my property rights could carry such a comedy of errors? With each step, the inspector inspected, his eyes lingering on the private property. No trespassing signs hastily affixed to a rogue lounge chair, a half-hearted attempt to make their claims seem legitimate. I think we need to find out if the construction of this pool had the proper permits," he mused, his eyebrows furrowing in apparent concern, while I nearly danced in delight at the poetic justice being served. "I mean, I could hear my lawn crying when they started plumbing for a makeshift waterfall, a classic case of alloying leisure with law-breaking. I called out over my shoulder to no one in particular, relishing the satisfying turn of events. The inspector's presence became a beacon of hope, a harbinger of logical consequence crashing down on the HOA members like a ton of overinflated pool floats. As the inspector knelt to jot something down on his clipboard, something shifted in the air. The feeling of united camaraderie seeped through my neighbors like magic, transforming our homes from passive fortresses into active participants in one conga line of shared triumph. Why, hello there, fellow homeowners! Stop throwing your snacks and start taking notes, I called out, fully diving into my role as the hostess of absurdity. Neighbors who had been circling their own lawns in skepticism or feeling disheartened began to emerge from their homes, drawn by the gravitational pull of community rebellion. Was this finally the catalyst we needed? Would my tiny revolt inspire others to stand against the HOA's overreaching grasp? As I stood there, the exhilarating rush my melodrama created transformed into a palpable force, uniting my fellow homeowners in a rising tide of hope against the absurdity of entitlement wrapped in tailored blazers. Tommy squeezed my shoulder, stifling laughter at the sight of our unsuspecting neighbors reporting the unfolding spectacle to their phones, capturing the hilarity of the moment. "What do you think, Alex? Should we set up some folding chairs for the audience?" he quipped, looking excessively amused by the unfolding calamity. "Maybe even sell snacks, like a true blockbuster event." My heart raced with genuine joy, a sense of shared victory blossoming within me, hilarity matched with heart. The mighty HOA had unleashed a frenzy of righteous rebellion amidst the inflatable unicorns. So, would this pool party end in chaos, or could we flip the script and make a splash that would echo through our neighborhood forever? As the inspector continued his audit of the HOA's hastily constructed water feature, a wave of surreality washed over me. It felt like something out of a movie, where the underdog hero rallies their allies against the dark forces of entitlement served on a rubber float. Tommy and I couldn't help but chuckle as more and more neighbors peeked out through drawn curtains and cracked doors, their curiosity piqued by the scene unfolding like a wild carnival. It was both absurd and glorious, a spectacle of resistance, decked out in inflatable sea creatures and sunblock. The HOA board must have felt like actors trapped in a production gone horribly off script. Even I could hear the crickets in the background signaling the impending doom of their charade. Honestly, I wanted to applaud the inspector for bravely entering the dragon's lair, even if that draconic lair was just a backyard overrun with colorful floaties. Meanwhile, Karen's complexion transformed from an autumnal red to a ghostly white, the exaggerated shift painting a picture so dramatic I half expected someone to throw back velvet curtains, revealing her impending epic demise. Had she finally realized the monumental blunder they'd made by sauntering onto my land? Did Karen think this pool party was a reality show challenge gone awry? Her tightly squeezed lips were a mere prelude to an entangled web of excuses I could envision budding along her brow. "Oh dear, Alex. What you see here is a mere misunderstanding," she sputtered like an inflatable dolphin punctured by a wayward lawn tool. Oh, that sweet, schadenfreude-laden phrase. The oldest trick in the HOA playbook. The inspector's pen scratched across his clipboard like a seasoned journalist documenting the shenanigans of an overreaching HOA board and the ensuing spectacle of defiance. "Interesting design choices here," he remarked, nodding at the undeniably questionable combination of health code violations and whimsical pool decor. "Tell me, did you guys think the flamingos could somehow hide your negligence?" Laughter erupted from the encroaching neighborhood crowd, a wave of camaraderie sweeping over us as we tapped into a shared sense of absurdity, much like a bizarre support group thriving on collective outrage. Who knew inflatable pool parties could spark a neighborhood's revolution against tyrannical governance? Perhaps the HOA's next venture could involve thematic home invasions, where they too could imagine what it feels like to be unwelcome on someone else's turf. In an unexpected twist of fate that could only be described as glorious, the audience began to form a huddle, maybe more of a collective of allies, each armed with their own grievances, ready to throw verbal tomatoes at the implied villain. "Hey, Tommy!" I exclaimed, a sudden brilliant idea overshadowing my playful irritation. "What's stopping us from holding a full-blown BBQ right here? We can make our own civil rights tribute to grilled meats and overcooked veggies while simultaneously dismantling this HOA water feature that collided with my yard like an unwelcome party crasher." Tommy's face lit up like the 4th of July fireworks display. He sprang into action, with the enthusiasm of someone who had just been told their dream of launching a landscaping empire could be achieved through creative guerrilla gardening. With a mini shouting match erupting into chants of free Alex, my fellow homeowners rallied around the tastiest idea since sliced bread, food. Suddenly, the specter of boredom vanished, replaced by electric excitement as we turned this moment into a neighborhood celebration. Suddenly, we were brainstorming a menu, strategizing who'd bring what while still maintaining the booming humor of mockery directed at Karen and her cohorts. "I'll do burgers, you get hot dogs, and oh, set up a lemonade stand. How about we create a poolside petty triumph drink?" I shouted, batting off the exhilaration of empowering my fellow disgruntled homeowners. It felt like we were making a stand, one burger at a time. As the crowd began to stir with that unmistakable eagerness of a gathering gaining momentum, I leaned forward, my hands planted firmly on my hips, relishing my new role. The inspector, peering from his clipboard, couldn't help but smirk at our concocted celebration of defiance. "Give me a week, and I'll organize it through the HOA," he quipped, a wry smile curling his lips. "I believe we owe it to ourselves as a community to have our own exceptional poolside festivities." And just like that, a sense of empowerment washed over everyone present. It wasn't just the HOA losing ground. It was about reclaiming our space, our community, and our sanity amidst inflatable creatures and narrative shenanigans. As I stood at the epicenter of this swirling vortex of enthusiasm, my heart soared at the potential uprising we had sparked. The tension had morphed into a party, a glorious rebellion against the absurdity of Karen's tyranny and her ill-fated attempts to turn my backyard into her private water park. "Let's forge ahead and rise against the king of entitlement wrapped in blazers, shall we?" I declared, arms raised like I was leading a rock concert. The crowd responded in a chorus of laughter and cheers, boiling with anticipation for the inaugural HOA BBQ truncated triumph over absurdity. The question lurked in my mind: could we topple this unwieldy tower of entitlement simply by embracing the spirit of joy and community through the strangest of gatherings? With the scent of rebellion wafting through the air like the tantalizing aroma of grilled burgers, the transformation from enraged homeowner to spirited community rallied around the impending BBQ. The crowd was alive with excitement, exchanging recipes and laughter as if they were plotting an epic event to dethrone a culinary dictator. Tommy darted through the mix, arms flapping like an overenthusiastic scarecrow, gathering supplies and volunteers with the zeal of a town crier. "We need napkins! Someone grab extra condiments! And don't forget the floaties, it's a pool party, after all." The absurdity of it all, paired with the delicious prospect of hot dogs sizzling on the grill, put a perfect cap on the chaos. I could already see us holding our own festive coup, turning their watery misadventure into a celebration that took back the laughter and joy from the HOA's overreach. Karen's eyes narrowed, her judgment transforming from a simmering rage to sheer bewilderment as she watched her magnificent plans descend into festive frenzy. If she were a cartoon character, steam would have been pluming out of her ears while she frantically gestured toward the scene imploding in front of her. I could have sworn I heard her mumbling something about poor taste and unruly excitement, but her words were drowned out by our neighbors chanting "BBQ for freedom" from every corner, like some culinary revolution was taking place right under her nose. As her eyes darted around, I imagined her trying to regain control, but it was clear this party had a life of its own, fueled by our shared outrage and bubbling affection for well-cooked meats. "Your OA regulations can't cage spirit," I shouted, mockingly lifting my spatula like a sword, sending the gathered neighbors into a gleeful uproar. The situation became a cacophony of laughter and chatter, intertwining with sizzling meat and splashes of pool water as Tommy commandeered the drink station. His hand-drawn poolside petty triumph sign brought in roaring laughter, while the unmistakable sound of cans popping became our anthem. Sipping lemonade, neighbors shouted their grievances alongside their thirst-quenching concoctions. A friendly competition pitted dads against one another. The hotter the grill, the louder the trash talk. "Bet you can't grill like I can. Ready to lose? Watch me make this a beefy masterpiece." As burgers flipped and franks twisted, one dad quipped, "Hey, this isn't just a pool party. It's a full-on community spatula showdown." Yes, those were the exact vibes I wanted. Nobody was focusing on Karen's scowling face, her power dwindling faster than the ice melting in our drinks. As our little rebellion grew, I noticed people emerging from their homes, stepping onto their porches in disbelief, curiosity pulling them toward the circus we had created. Neighbors I'd seen only waving awkwardly during morning commutes were now flocking to our glorious feast, holding plates piled high with grilled food like warriors from a legendary battle. Old Mrs. Jenkins, a frail woman with a soft smile and surprisingly high energy, waddled over armed with a famed potato salad. I didn't want to miss the grand uprising. Who needs an HOA party when I have my world-famous carbs to contribute? She winked at me, as if she was handing down a secret family recipe into the annals of community folklore. Each person brought forth a bite of their history, creating a colorful tapestry of food and camaraderie to contrast with Karen's predilection for rules and regulations. At that moment, as I surveyed the scene, I realized this wasn't just a protest. It was a revitalization of community spirit, and laughter echoed through the entire neighborhood, an anthem singing in the face of entitlement. I couldn't help but think about how often I'd felt isolated in my efforts to stand up against the HOA powers that be. As I laughed with Tommy, snitched a perfectly grilled sausage off the serving table, and caught the wholesomeness seep into my very core, I suddenly felt less like an embattled homeowner and more like a liberator. I was charting the territory of connection, where pungent BBQ sauce met the bittersweet tang of rebellion. Would a coalition of friends banded together over cookouts be enough to send Karen packing back to her lair? But that was the magic, wasn't it? Here I was, staging a counterparty where the roast beef was seasoned with a sprinkling of courage and camaraderie, and the stakes were less about pots of gold and more about a sense of belonging. Even the inspector, who had started by holding his clipboard like a torchbearer of regulation, was now strutting about, doling out compliments to the grill masters and laughing at the absurdity. Who knew a pool party could turn into a revolution? Bravo! Just imagine what would happen if we turned this into an annual gathering. You know, free food and all that, who could say no? He joked. The entire scene began coalescing around me. The sheer delirium of dining infiltrated with humor, capturing the hearts of every neighbor who once risked their sense of community for adherence to arbitrary whims of the HOA. Just as I was about to proudly declare the first annual Neglected Homeowners Poolside BBQ Bash, Karen stomped forward, defiance painting her face. As she prepared to hurl empty threats my way like stray pool noodles, I prepared myself theatrically, hands on my hips, ready to deflect whatever she might spew. "This is an unlawful rally," she declared, her once commanding tone devoid of strength, acknowledged only by a few crickets chirping audibly from the backyard hedges. "You all will regret this." Oh, sweet irony. I turned to the neighbors, giving her the side eye of exaggerated disbelief, followed by an eruption of laughter reverberating from every corner. So, there we stood, entrenched in a ridiculous showdown filled with laughter, sizzling hot dogs, and Karen's impending doom in the form of a so-called board member gone wild. The absurdity of the moment wasn't lost on me. The unlikely, before and after responses made it clear that laughter was the ultimate rebellion, and I was ready to raise the stakes. I didn't need a grandiose speech or rapid-fire comebacks. This pool party was already solidified in history as the moment when we, and the HOA, would learn that every home is at its core not simply a piece of property but a site of community ownership. Armed with a hefty dose of optimism, camaraderie, and maybe just a few burgers, I bellowed out, "So who's with me in celebrating this delicious liberation?" The crowd roared, fueled by our cheeky spirit, and the joyful sounds of revolution washed over us, leading into the real question. Could this democratic gathering shift the tides of power against her and her cohort? The tension was thicker than a winter coat as Karen stood, arms crossed like some cartoon villainifying overlord, glaring at our spirited barbecue brigade. It was as if we had drunkenly sauntered into her meticulously arranged tea party, overflowing with wigs and tiaras. Her discontent was palpable, as every neighbor's chuckle seemed to deepen the furrows of her stern demeanor. I could practically see the mental gears whirring as she cranked out threats like an overzealous robot slated for an early retirement. "This is unacceptable. All of you will hear from the board. All of you," she boomed, her voice shaking slightly, revealing that the real storm brewing was within her belly, not the weather. Each exclamation only served to amplify our resolve. There was something hilariously empowering about watching the unrivaled chess piece of authority flounder under a siege of grilled goodness and laughter. The crowd erupted in unison, responding to Karen's dramatic remarks with an array of playful jeers and mock applause. "Whoa, Karen, isn't there a no-fun zone for you to patrol?" someone shouted, a smirk visible amidst the gathering. With every word, our tight-knit neighborhood added another layer of absurdity to the scene unfolding. I stood there, a fiery conductor orchestrating a symphony of community rebellion. This gathering was no longer just about flipping burgers, but about claiming back our vibrancy from the grasp of her entitlement. I glanced at Tommy, who wore the most ridiculous sun hat emblazoned with King of Cookouts, and we both stifled laughter at just how ludicrous this entire ordeal had become, the epitome of underdogs throwing the ultimate block party right where Karen's reign stood in tatters. Suddenly, amid the shuffle of cheerful chatter and sizzling food, an idea struck me like a rogue hot dog flying off the grill. Leaning in toward my crew, I suggested, what if, wait for it, we enact a subtle yet powerful rebuttal to her reign of terror? How about we appoint a new neighborhood fun committee? We could draft our own bylaws, infused with as much hot sauce as necessary. A chorus of gleeful approval surged through the ranks. Yes, we need to finally decide the official drink of the neighborhood. What will it be? Lemonade or iced tea? It was happening. The glorious blend of community and humor was spiraling into the very dynamics of rebellion. The looming threat of Karen now transformed into an afterthought. Her frustrated huffing slipped down the social ladder like yesterday's lukewarm grilled burger. Meanwhile, back in the crucible of nibbles and laughs, our furry mascot for the day, an overly enthusiastic golden retriever named Max, had discovered that nothing brought neighbors together quite like adorable chaos. As he bounded between picnic tables, snatching bits of the leftover hot dogs, lucky pup, my mind wandered back to my own plans of liberation. We are redefining neighborhood watch, I declared dramatically, tossing a piece of charcoal into the air, mostly for flair and a minor safety hazard. We shall stand guard and make sure no fun is unlawfully intercepted by the powers of the HOA. Laughter erupted once more, and I envisioned this act of culinary defiance marching past the HOA board hall as a rallying cry for all those trapped under Karen's thumb. Yet, as the revelry swirled in a comforting embrace of ether, I caught a glimpse of my neighbor Mr. Henderson, who had long been swallowed by his own fears of imposing HOA policies. With a plate brimming over with assorted goodies, he looked dazed, like he'd just found an unguarded stash of candy left over from Halloween. I can't believe I'm here. This is amazing, he stammered, as if a fog was lifting from around him. Instantly, I recognized the transformation in his demeanor, a reflection of everyone's newfound confidence and unity. His wide smile ignited my own enthusiasm further. Here was proof that one tiny infraction against the machine could spearhead a revival among his fellow residents. How many more alliances were resting beneath the surface, garnered by mere camaraderie, ready to join the fight against the monotony? As I took a moment to soak in the joy radiating throughout our makeshift get-together, I felt empowered to seize the moment to strengthen our bond with a heartfelt and mildly ridiculous speech. My neighbors, today we turn this garden of chaos into a meaningful response against the formality and rigidity of our HOA's regulations. We can celebrate together, dance together, and even address the real issues that matter to us, from flowers to lawn ornaments. We may just fry up the big wigs in our backyard, one grill at a time. Cheers erupted, and I grabbed a spatula like a triumphant sword rattler, ready to guide our revolution toward becoming a force that Karen could neither ignore nor extinguish. The unrestrained joy cascading around us carried an undeniably infectious energy. But as I turned my gaze, Karen stood frozen, mouth slightly agape, clearly at a loss for words amidst the sheer delight of the party at her expense. I couldn't help but wonder what the next move would be. Would she try to drown us in paper, or could her defiance morph into begrudging respect for our newfound tenacity? The duality of our devastating joy and her simple confusion created a striking mural of absurdity right before my eyes. Shall we really turn the page on neighborhood governance and commence the era of fun? Or has Karen left herself in a proverbial pool of disappointment? I mused to myself, brimming with anticipation for this delightful uprising. Who knew that laughter could be the most effective weapon one could wield against bureaucracy? And there, amidst the zesty aroma of barbecued delights and the sweet sound of rebellion, I couldn't help but feel that we were onto something, a movement so strong it would ripple throughout our neighborhood. Every bite savored felt like a battle won, an affirmation that our voices mattered, our struggles would be heard, and our rights celebrated. The stakes of this hilariously defiant pool party had risen beyond a mere BBQ escapade. It was about our sense of home, and the undeniable truth that we would no longer be puppets to the whims of anyone, especially a power-hungry HOA board. What lay ahead remained cloaked in uncertainty, but one thing was certain. Our journey into the heart of the absurd would lead us to a future of unapologetic joy and unyielding community spirit. As the barbecue revelry continued, I felt a wave of camaraderie surge through our makeshift congregation. With every triumphant cheer, it became evident that the very essence of our neighborhood was evolving before my eyes, morphing into something effortlessly vibrant, something that Karen could not legislate away. Only the HOA could turn a community pool party into a battle for our basic right to enjoy our backyards. I joked to Tommy, who was busy trying to convince Max not to turn the hot dog platter into a personal moonlit buffet. It was in these chaotic moments that I realized the true driving force behind our growing alliance was much stronger than just a resistance to Karen. It was the joy of gathering, the laughter shared, and the memories made that established a foundation against her iron grip. The aroma of barbecue wafted through the air, mingling with the enthusiastic chatter of neighbors, transforming our little corner into a carnival of humanity. Someone started a spontaneous dance-off, and a few brave souls, one sporting a pineapple-patterned shirt, the other a beach ball hat, displayed their moves with an absurd level of enthusiasm. I found myself cracking up as they attempted a bizarre fusion of the cha-cha and the worm, while others shouted playful commentary. "I can feel the HOA board's judgment piercing through my sunny disposition," I quipped, as I wiped away tears of laughter. Every giggle echoed a defiant shout against the suffocating power of Karen, burrowing deeper, as if carving out a niche of joy that she clearly could not touch. But the fun wasn't just surface level, it was deeply moving. Mr. Henderson, the man I had once seen timidly cowering beneath the HOA's whims, was now the ringleader of an impromptu relay race, motioning his fellow neighbors into a sweaty frenzy. It was almost poetic, watching how he led his fellow residents with a sense of purpose. A pump of adrenaline surged within me. What if this neighborhood event ignited a revolution too big for the HOA to ignore? What if this was the birth of a united front, transforming our homes from passive places of residence into a vibrant community of collaboration and celebration? With thoughts like fireworks exploding in my head, I charged forward, aiming to validate and channel every ounce of that euphoric energy. "Tommy, let's get Max included in the fun, best tail waggers from the HOA be warned." Amidst the festivities, a flicker of mischievous inspiration flooded my mind. Why, oh why, had I not thought of it sooner? I darted over to the grill, fervently motioning for everyone to gather around. "Ladies and gentlemen, residents of this beautiful neighborhood, today is not just a day for barbecue. It's the dawn of a new era. An era of unity, creativity, and dare I say it, an era where we become the masters of our community." The crowd erupted, laughter blending with wild applause. "I present to you the map of our new Neighborhood Fun Committee, drafted on the back of this paper towel no less." I held it high, desperately suppressing the urge to giggle at my own absurdity. But the crowd was enchanted, cheering as they began mimicking my enthusiastic gestures. Perhaps I had put my foot in my mouth, but who doesn't love a little mad zeal wrapped in a side of humor? Karen Ainda stood in the periphery, a tornado of disapproval, her sour glare contrasting sharply with the jubilant ambiance. Her eyes darted like lasers, desperately searching for a way to infiltrate our day of joy. But by now, the invisible barrier that had trapped our neighborhood in silent resentment against her ironclad grasp had cracked wide open, allowing spontaneous bursts of unrestrained laughter to flood in. "Is this what a coup feels like?" I thought, bursting into spontaneous giggles as I envisioned us collectively assembling a mini army of rebellion, wielding spatulas rather than swords. Karen was witnessing a comedy unfolding right at her doorstep, and she couldn't do a thing about it. Every neighbor elbowing each other, pointing, and laughing at the absurdity of the situation offered a sweet vindication for what had been stolen from us, our joy. But the reality hit. This confrontation with Karen had to transcend simple revelry and mimic the crisp clarity of a legal statement. Among the playful bickering and joy, I finally declared my stance. We can challenge the tyranny of the HOA with our voices, our laughter, and our camaraderie. We have to rise like the perfectly grilled burgers we've devoured today and stand firm against bureaucratic silliness. The room erupted in an ecstatic cheer, sound waves crashing against the walls of indifference. There was something infectious about unity, a glow enveloping us all as each voice added to a crescendo of rebellion, creating an atmosphere so electric it felt like a championship victory of self-assertion against the frosty rigidness of arbiters like Karen. But amidst the storm of jubilance, as our newfound Neighborhood Fund Committee processing chart emerged, a thought struck me like a sudden downpour. Was this pool party experience actually serving as our foundation for negotiations? Sure, the laughter and jubilation were epic, but would this translate into anything practical? Tommy caught my eye and mimed furrowing his brow in solidarity. "Dude, if we don't put our plans into action, all that merriment will just evaporate into thin air," he smirked, and I appreciated him for managing to ground me. Maybe we can start drafting a proposal, laying down the foundation for how to fortify our democratic rights against Karen's iron fist, I exclaimed, quick to turn the revelry into something tangible and powerful. The foundation of a community should be built on more than sunshine and celebration. It deserved planning and collaboration, the ultimate toolkit for establishing autonomy. As the sun sank lower, brushing bright hues across our lawn, I couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. The plan, the proposal, and the shockingly bold act of reclaiming our neighborhood was playing out like a sitcom off the air. My heart swelled with hope as I looked around at my vibrant neighbors. The dynamic narrative we were creating seemed inevitable. Our laughter, dreams, and fervor would be the echo that inspired future generations. Would this lead us to victory over Karen's bitter reign, or would it merely play out like an episode of a sitcom, forever lingering in the annals of neighborhood lore? Well, if there was one thing I had learned today, it was this. When a neighborhood finds its voice, a real revolution could indeed begin in a backyard. It could transform everything. Now, who wouldn't want to pitch that to the HOA board?